Center along with Dennis Anderson, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
Members of Minnesota's Chippewa tribes will be harvesting wild rice off of reservation land without state licenses. The tribal members are hoping to establish their rights under an 1855 treaty with the federal government.
The controversy over garbage fees in the city of Superior is coming to a head as the city's landfill faces a $1 million deficit.
And we'll have a news file story from 25 years ago and the week's top business headlines.
It's all coming up next on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thanks for watching. And Denny, it's good to be back after a week away for the public TV membership campaign.
And I think we gave the viewers a pretty good rundown of what's coming up and what they're actually spending their dollars on.
Yeah, and a lot of interesting programs
Absolutely.
during the membership drive and some very interesting topics tonight. So let's get started.
All right, thank you very much, Julie. What rights do Chippewa tribal members have on Minnesota lands ceded to the state in an 1855 treaty with the federal government? Well, to test those rights, some tribal members will be harvesting wild rice without a state license in the ceded territory. Now, the Minnesota DNR says that's a violation, and citations will be issued. Tribal members say they have this right, which could ultimately force a treaty rights battle in federal court. Now, here to help sort out the issue is Frank Bibeau, a tribal attorney with the Leech Lake Band and spokesman for the 1855 Treaty Authority. Thanks, Frank, for making the drive to our studio tonight. I might also mention we did invite the DNR to send a representative, but they declined. Frank, first a history lesson. What about the 1855 treaty? What's in it? What did it promise?
Well, the 55 is one of the last treaties that was made in terms of land cessions from Michigan to North Dakota. There's only two others after that. And so what happens is, after the patterns of treaties had convinced us, they understood we always had the rights to hunt, fish, and gather written into those treaties. There are two treaties, the 54 and the 55, I would call sister treaties, that were signed within 3 months of each other. And if you look at the 1854, the words hunt, fish, and gather appear. The Mississippi, the Chippewa of the Mississippi, which I basically would be representing in this group, signed on the 54, saying that they could have all the compensation and that we would get the compensation from the 55. So we would have never agreed in 1855 to move west and say we're not going to hunt, fish, and gather. There would have been a fight.
Is there a problem with the wording of the treaty, however? Because I looked it up today, and Article 1 of the 1855 treaty explicitly states, the said Indians do further fully and entirely relinquish and convey to the United States any and all right, title, and interest of whatsoever nature the same may be, which they may now have in this land.
Right, and that's the language that has confused Minnesota in a sense, because a lot of times most of the tribes have one treaty and maybe one reservation. The Chippewa have 44 treaties with the United States, and so you really have to look at our succession of treaties. Our first treaty was 1787, so it even precedes all of the 13 colonies making the United States. And so when you look at the first two in our territory, which I would say would be the 1825 and 26, in the 1825 treaty, the United States put a boundary across between the Lakota and the Dakota and us, and they said that we have the right to decide who hunts north of the boundary, and they decide who hunts south. In the 1826 treaty, it says that we retain jurisdiction and that title to the land won't change. title to the land changed. We ceded a bunch of land.
Let's take a look. We got some maps of this, Frank,
Sure.
as we're talking about. Let's take a look at. Can you talk to us a little bit about just how much? It looks like it covers a lot of territory in the state of Minnesota.
I believe if you didn't count the reservation territory, it's something like 13 million acres, but because of the size of the territories of the reservations, there's about 10 million acres of land inside the 55. And you can see that it goes right over west to the Red River, goes all the way up to Hudson. You can see where it goes right up to Canada and almost up on the Iron Range, not too far from Fond du Lac and Duluth.
Just west of Duluth all the way to the North Dakota border.
And it also includes part of the north end of Mille Lac Lake.
So what is the 1855 Treaty Authority hoping to gain by encouraging tribal members to wild rice harvest off of reservation lands?
Well, we have two things. One, we do want to actually have the state recognize and understand how our rights really work. And so that is to hunt, fish, and gather. But we also believe that our rights we can use for environmental protection against the Sandpiper and Line 3 pipelines and things like that. You might remember recently there was a case here in federal court called Square Hook, and it involved tribal members who were netting and selling walleye off reservation. And what happened in that case was Judge Tunheim, he dismissed that case for treaty rights. And so what that meant was they could not apply the Lacey Act to us. And what he said in his decision is that our rights are exclusive from the state of Minnesota, and they're exclusive from the United States as well. And that Congress could change that. But at this point, because our rights are exclusive, I believe the state of Minnesota has to give us some kind of consultation and some kind of consent.
A major off-reservation harvesting event is planned for August 27th near Nisswa. So, are you expecting a turnout of band members to do some harvesting there? Are you expecting the DNR to be there issuing tickets?
No, I think DNR is going to smarten up before that happens.
They're threatening to do that.
They're threatening, and they always threaten that. To tell you the truth, we had a 2010 off-reservation fish-off in Bemidji. They confiscated some nets. No one was prosecuted. The county attorney tried to get the Attorney General's office to prosecute, and they were like, oh, we only do felonies, and so we want you to prosecute it. It costs too much, and we don't want to go to court either.
I do have a response from the Minnesota DNR. They refused to appear on the program tonight, but they did send us this notation. DNR and tribal agencies have a long history of working together on resource issues like this, and we will continue to keep open lines of communications with the bands. We have said, however, that off-reservation harvest rights do not exist in the 1855 treaty area, and that we will uphold state laws. Your reaction, Frank?
Well, they don't understand how the treaty law really works. And so they're going to find out that they could actually be open to some kind of Section 1981 crimes against our civil rights by using the police powers unlawfully. They should really start checking things out, because if they talk to people who understand federal Indian law and where it is right now, they have no jurisdiction.
So you don't think they will be there to uphold state law, their law?
That's the only law that they could even attempt to hold against us. And if they do, I think they're going to be making a giant mistake.
So you're not looking at this as a way of getting a test case to federal court to push this, because that could be to your advantage at some point down the line, perhaps?
It could. At this point, actually, we're considering other things like injunctions. We're also looking at if they issue citations, we would remove them promptly to federal court and make the state defend those citations in federal court, because they're not going to make it work in federal court.
I want to get back to something that you said earlier, because this is about a lot more than just wild rice. You're really looking at some regulatory authority,
yes,
perhaps on these lands that could have major implications for, as you mentioned, the pipeline or mines or power lines that come through. Has that been tested anywhere?
It has, but it hasn't been successful. But a lot of the places that have tried it are out on the western coast. And the difference in our treaties, and that's why I use that word exclusive, what Judge Tunheim was able to reason out through all of this trial on Operation Square Hook is that the West Coast treaties, and sometimes you see where the people have got this like 30-foot pole and a dip net and they're getting fish out of the river and you see them pull the pole up. Those resources are so scarce that their treaties say that they are allowed to fish in the customary and usual places in common with the citizens of the territory or in common with the citizens of the United States, because they weren't states at the time. Those are 1855 treaties. Our treaty in 1842, the northern part of Wisconsin, says our lands, and that goes back to that map from Michigan to North Dakota, are held in common by the Lake Superior and by the Chippewa of the Mississippi. The United States is not included in that, and that's why our rights are exclusive, and that's why we can do things even without regulation, like the Lacey Act, without the United States.
So this could get fairly contentious, though, if the tribes use this authority that you believe that you have to stop what some would consider progress and job-creating projects up here.
Well, progress is a mixed bag. I live in Ball Club, where the Mississippi and the Ball Club, Mississippi and the Leech Rivers come together. Line 3 runs down Highway 2. They are going to abandon that pipeline in place, and then they want to run 2 free pipelines, brand new, right through virgin wild rice lakes and rivers from Park Rapids to Superior. Now, as far as I'm concerned, you don't get to leave a trashy pipe in the ground by my house, and 2 more anticipated ones in the next decade or so, and then get a free spot to start the next 50 years of pollution.
If it does get contention, would the Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs intervene for you?
Well, we've already petitioned to them, and what we're trying to get them to do is have the EPA and the Corps of Engineers actually follow through with their trust responsibilities for clean water.
Now, talk about wild rice itself, because there's a huge spiritual connection with the native people and wild rice. And how does that tie into what
Well,
you're
that's
trying to do?
probably what drives us the most. It's the most central part of our culture. In our creation stories, we were told to go where the rice grows on the water, where the food grows on the water. And so in our migration stories, we came here and we found that food. And part of our responsibility as Anishinaabe is to protect wild rice. And so we're seeing it not being protected, and we believe that if we're not protecting it, it'll disappear, and that's the food that has kept us alive forever. And so we have this responsibility to not only watch out for it, but we're integrated into it. You know, when you think about wild rice, it's the canary in the mine. It grows in the water, it grows in the air, and it grows in the earth, and then we participate with it. And when we harvest, we're actually reseeding it better than nature does itself. And so we are part of wild rice, and wild rice is part of us.
So you don't worry that moving off the reservation to exercise these rights could potentially harm the wild rice population, as some people say that over-harvesting of walleye and mille lacs has caused some issues over there.
Was it right for the DNR to stop fishing there on Mille Lacs?
Well,
I realize you're not with the Mille Lacs band.
Well, let me just say this. It's not an Indian problem, and it's not a fisherman problem. They blame the Indian fishermen an awful lot, but actually it's lakeshore overdevelopment on Mille Lacs by people who own property that they want to enhance the property value of and sell it for more when they move, and they want to develop their lakeshore. Now, I think it's the PCA and DNR have been doing a lake study, and they found that once you get up to about 50% development on a lake, you hit the tipping point, and it starts, to use a poor term, it starts turning into a cesspool. Okay, so now you go to Red Lake, where the walleye were supposedly fished out or netted out, okay? They said it would take decades to get those walleye back. They were back in 7 years, and that's because it's a pristine environment. You're not going to get Mille Lacs back. So in a sense, you should leave those walleye alone, because they're the ones that are going to be the survivors for some time. They're going to have to keep that lake shut down because they haven't managed the resource. That's our concern, is they're not managing that resource. They're going to let pipelines come through new places. We see them, the state of Minnesota, not doing their job for an environment we have to live in for millennia to come.
Frank, I wish we had more time to chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Frank Bibeau, attorney for the Leech Lake Band. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
Now, let's dig into our news file archive for a look at what was making news 25 years ago this week.
It took crews over an hour today to ready the Crusader II for its 6-block trip from the DM&IR depot in Two Harbors to near Lighthouse Point. The 36-foot commercial fishing boat had to be hoisted with a logging grappler, then secured on a flatbed truck. But the time spent today was nothing compared to the 3 years spent arranging for the move.
See, the lighthouse is on the National Registry, and you can't disturb the area, and where we were going to put it, it would have, so we had to change our plans.
Today's trip through town moved slowly, with guides motioning the oversized load around corners and down the street, And the care paid off when the Crusader arrived safely at its destination. There it will serve as a reminder of commercial fishing in the area.
Development of tourism for the city of Two Harbors is real important, and the Crusader, I think, will play a role in that.
And in a romantic move by planners, the Crusader 2 will face its home port of Knife River, where it was christened over 50 years ago by then Crown Prince Olaf of Norway. For Late Edition, Julie Zenner, KDLH News.
No.
For years, residents of Superior have enjoyed municipal garbage service paid out of city coffers, but now Superior's landfill is running a deficit and the mayor has proposed a residential garbage fee to fill the gap. This week, Superior councilors voted down a proposed $9.75 monthly fee, sending the issue back to city administration. A special council meeting has been called for next week to look at alternatives. And joining us to talk about the garbage issue is Bruce Hagen, the mayor of Superior. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me, Julie and Dennis.
Mayor Hagen, how did trash become such a big budget issue in the city of Superior?
It's always been a big budget issue. The fact of the matter is that it's gotten out of control without any fault to anybody that's locally. It's federal, state mandates, regulations, engineering, permitting process, and the actual construction of a landfill has gone very technical. And right now, up until this year, the general fund was subsidizing the landfill to the tune of $1.1 million. What that really means is the general fund is for core services. So core services have to be reduced, if you will, to supply revenue to the landfill for packing garbage. And we've come to the crossroads in the fork in the crossroads where the general fund cannot support that anymore.
Were you surprised that the council voted down the idea of charging a fee?
Well, the council is looking at options and alternatives as they should, but the reality is we've looked at this for like 3 years now as far as professional consultants or professionals within the city hall and looking at all the options available. And we've crunched the numbers down to what we believe is the lowest possible fee that could possibly charge and still maintain black rather than red at the bottom line and supply the landfill to its duration of continuation.
Now, Mayor, you've called a special city council meeting for this coming Tuesday night. What will happen should there not be a decision made to implement a fee?
That's a good question. If there isn't a decision made relatively soon, by state statute, I have to present the general fund budget to the council in September, the first meeting in September. Right now, the general fund budget is balanced. That is without any subsidy to the landfill. Should the council decide that they're going to have to subsidize the landfill out of the general fund, 2016 will have about a $700,000 deficit. We can't do that. They don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So we have to reach a compromise and a realistic value for what the landfill needs in relationship to not having a deficit.
So you're fearing cuts then in general services, maybe police, fire?
Well, it would have to come from a multitude of sources to balance the budget without having red in the budget general fund and also having the landfill not in the red itself. So it's robbing Peter to pay Paul, but Peter's becoming very broke.
As someone who has always lived in a community where you pay for garbage services, it surprised me to hear that Superior doesn't. Is it unusual for a city the size of Superior to really cover those garbage fees?
It's a rarity. If you live one block outside of the city of Superior, you're paying $23 a month. And any village around, if it's same thing, City of Duluth, most any community that I know of in Wisconsin, let alone the nation, it's always been that way.
So what are you hearing, Mayor? What's the opposition to that?
Well, the opposition is what it should be, and that's we don't want to pay any more. And it's been a great service for with included in the tax levy for out of core services. But I hear from a lot of people said I've lived in X town, Y town, ABC state, and I've always paid for this. So people have asked me. In fact, I've had people ask me when they move to town, how much am I going to pay for my garbage? It's what's included. You got to be kidding.
I would imagine that there are a number of garbage providers who are kind of circling around Superior, licking their chops a little bit, thinking that there might be some opportunities coming up.
Right.
Well, how are you approaching that as an option?
We put the collection service and the landfill out for an RFP for bids. We received one RFP response from Waste Management for collection, one for operating the landfill but not quite owning it from SKB out of, I think, the Twin Cities. The SKB proposal, we just didn't think it was valuable for the city. Too many risks, too many challenges on the backs of the citizens. The waste management proposal was valued, but we still believe we can perform the service much cheaper at a guaranteed rate.
And so you would be looking at only having one provider come in rather than letting market forces kind of
Right,
work their
but
way.
Our preference is for the city of Superior to continue the service.
It would seem if this issue isn't settled now, it'll come up again and again and again down the road. Is that how you would assess it?
Absolutely. There's been a proposal to have a $7.75 per month fee, but I can guarantee you, and I'll guarantee the people of Superior, that within a year or two at the most, the council will be looking at raising that fee because a $7.75 fee will show deficits and growing. So, and there will be no reserve for capping the landfill when it closes in 2022 or 23. So to have a fee that isn't realistic, it's fiscally irresponsible.
So down the road then, in reality, according to yourself, this could be even more expensive if you don't tackle it today.
If we don't tackle it today, it's going to be going back to the citizens again and again to say, well, we need more because it wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm. What about the closure of the landfill itself? What
Good
are the
point.
plans in 2022, 23 when that finally reaches capacity?
The current landfill has an airspace capacity till about 2022 when the most recent cell will be filled and it will lose the airspace. We don't believe it's going to be of any value or benefit to the people to go back to the DNR to seek another permit for a new cell. For a lot of reasons. First of all, there's a lot of wetlands around there. Wetland mitigation will cost probably $500,000. Just getting the permit and engineering is about $2.5 million, and there's no guarantee that they will give you a permit. So it's a short life for that landfill, and the cost and the risk to put into the process of a new cell or permit or getting a permit, it isn't worth it.
Garbage has gotten expensive. And
Garbage is garbage right now, the landfill and collection service is second to our police department. It's about 6.3 million. The police department is 6.5 million. And in another year or two, the garbage would be the most expensive service in the city of Superior. And that's wrong.
Are there strong efforts in Superior to kind of cut down the amount of garbage that's going to the landfill? Real heavy recycling programs, things like that?
That's a good point. Recycling has taken a hold. So the tonnage that was in the landfill, brought to landfill, is way down. We take the garbage from WLSSD. Their tonnages were like 120,000 tons a year. I think they're down to 95,000, somewhere in there. Our tonnage was like 10,500. We're down to about 9,000. So there's fixed costs out there that we can't do anything about. We only have 3 employees out there. So the tonnage goes down, the revenues go down, but the fixed costs don't go down.
Yeah. Do residents of Superior right now, Bruce, have to buy special garbage bags or garbage cans?
No. We supply the garbage cans. They're 96-gallon cans. They're automatically picked up by a machine, the garbage truck, if you will. So no, they don't have to purchase anything.
Big week coming ahead for Superior.
It's a big week. It's been a big 2 years, 3 years of discussion, and I suspect it'll be longer. And I the council is they're thinking this thing out. We've tried to present the facts that we know them with our professional consultants, internal, crunching the numbers, and we sincerely believe that 975 will prevent deficits, and it'll have a reserve for capping the landfill when we close it.
I was actually going to turn you into a positive direction here and talk about the big week coming up with the Dragon Boat and the Head of the Lakes Fair, but
It's Dragon Boats.
A lot going on.
Started tonight, and it's going to be exciting.
Yep.
well, thank you very much,
Thank
Mayor,
you.
for coming in.
Thanks,
We appreciate
Mayor.
it.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. It's time now for the week's business news from the publishers of Business North. ZMC Hotels of Duluth has been acquired by a private investment group led by California real estate investor Mark Hall. The acquisition involves 29 hotels in 10 states, including 7 in our region. ZMC's announcement came 9 months after the Goldfine family, which owns the company, said its properties were being put up for sale. Chief Executive Ken Goldfine did not reveal a sale price in today's formal announcement. ZMC Hotels is an offshoot of the former Goldfine's department store chain of Duluth.
The Leibovitz School of Business and Economics at UMD will hold its first Entrepreneurship and Innovation Conference October 1st. It will feature 15 successful entrepreneurs who have excelled in the areas of high tech, product innovation, venture capital, crowdfunding, food ventures, and renewable energy. The new conference idea is structured as a student-run event. Shauna Jokinen, who is in her senior year of study, was named chairperson. She owns Pink Mosquito, a company that offers organic mosquito control.
CG Bretting Manufacturing of Ashland is celebrating several milestones this year. 2015 marks its 125th year in operation, and the company also was named Business of the Year by the Ashland Area Development Corporation. The privately owned company recently hired a fifth-generation member of the Bretting family. The firm hosted a community event last month to honor its history. The company's roots can be traced back to 1890, when Christopher George Bretting purchased the Parish Iron Works, which made equipment for the sawmill industry. For more on these and other stories, visit businessnorth.com.
If you have a comment about our program, now is the time to call. Dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message, or send an email to almanacnorth@wdse.org. And for up-to-date program information, go to the WDSE website for the latest on our schedule, updates on your favorite programs, and notification of special events here at the station. And Denny, there are just a few weeks left before the schools open. Some are starting, I think, as early as next week.
I suspect a lot of back-to-school sales are going on now. Huh?
Well, I know my credit card just showed the textbook bill for my college
Oh, it
students.
did it?
So, for Denny and the crew here at Almanac North, I'm Julie Zenner. Have a great weekend.